Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. This episode is brought to you by AutoRescueTools.com and Isaac Rodell. If you are looking to get into module programming, but you are not sure what kind of laptop you're going to need or how to set it up for programming, Isaac is your guy. He can set up laptops specifically to do control module programming for specific brands with partitioned hard drives and all the software that you're going to need to do this. He also sells key cutting equipment, scan tools, and other diagnostic equipment. I bought some stuff from him in the past, and the support is phenomenal. So I highly recommend checking out the website. Again, that's AutoRescueTools.com. The link will be in the show notes. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to another episode of the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and I will be your host once again this week for this episode. And this one's a little different, a little special. We crossed, and I do say we intentionally, an important threshold, or just a cool threshold for the podcast. We hit 1 million downloads this week in just the podcast form, right? So just audio, not including the YouTube channel. I don't do video outside of the interviews, so the YouTube channel is just kind of audio in a different format, but that doesn't count towards the download numbers. Anyways, through the actual podcast hosting site that I use, we crossed 1 million downloads. Now, does that really mean anything? Not necessarily. It doesn't change anything about the podcast. It doesn't make me any more or less money. I don't really make that much money off of this podcast. I basically make enough from the sponsors to cover my time to make the show, which is totally fine with me because I get some other stuff out of it. But anyways, still really cool just to think that 1 million downloads happened. Now, did every single one of those get listened to? Probably not, but it piqued in people's interest enough to hit that little download button to actually look into it. And you know, podcast numbers are definitely different than straight up YouTube numbers. And on top of that, this is a very niche audience that I am talking to. If that's you listening to this, you're into this, and that's actually an advantage of something like this, right? I'm not talking about sports, I'm not talking about politics, and so those types of even just audio shows are going to garner a way bigger group of people because a larger swath of people care about sports, politics, food, travel, whatever. That applies to all kinds of people, where automotive diagnostics and some programming and key stuff, that is a very narrow focus, but the people who are interested, hey, that's you, are really into it, right? If you are interested enough about this topic to seek out a podcast that is audio only, talking about the most technical aspects of repairing vehicles, you're really into it, right? And so I consider that a really good thing. The people that I have gotten to interact with from doing this podcast, people have reached out to me through email or Facebook, or that I've met at events. These are my people, and they're really into it and really positive about it too. I can say 99.999% of interactions I've had via the podcast has been positive, which is also really cool because you put yourself out there on the internet, and obviously there's assholes out there. That's just how the world works and how the internet works. But the audience and the people that have connected to the show and to me, it's all been really great. And why I keep doing this, right? The people that listen, the people that get something out of it, that's why I continue to do this week after week after week, right? I took a break in the beginning of last year, and we got Tommy on board and kind of reinvigorated things. But other than that, like the reason I do this every single week is because almost every single week I get a message or email from someone telling me like what they're doing in the field and why they're excited about it, and potentially why this show either inspired them, helped them, piqued their curiosity, opened their eyes to something they weren't aware of, whatever it might be. That's the thing that motivates me to keep doing this. So anyways, this episode is just kind of a recap, a summary. Hey, we hit a cool milestone of 1 million downloads, and I'll just kind of give you an update on myself, like how I got to where I'm at. Maybe you haven't been listening for that long, and where the show's going in the future. Just some cool stuff about the podcast. So real quick, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, but I started this in 2020, and this was January of 2020, and it was like right before COVID dropped. It was not 2 months after I had began the podcast that everything shut down that March of 2020. And, the world was never the same. And to think back to that point, which it's been a little over 6 years now since then, I am happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it, and that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. And all that's happened in my life, along with the podcast being a piece of it throughout the way. I mean, I have been divorced. I've moved 3 different times. I quit my teaching job. I started the mobile business before the podcast, but I took my mobile business full time. I hired 4 different employees. I got to travel to Australia to do teaching. It has been an absolute crazy, wild ride. The podcast has been that consistent almost every single week, sitting down to record an episode about what's going on in this specific area of my life. And yeah, I took a few months off the beginning of last year just to reset, and we got Tommy on board and reinvigorated things. But otherwise, this has been a very consistent part of my life. And a very positive one as well. Again, because of the people that I've met, the connections that I've made, and the things that I've learned along the way. Like, you just don't realize how many incredibly smart people are out there that are interested in this sort of stuff and their life experience and what they bring to the table. And I feel lucky to be able to interact with a number of you over the years, whether it be electronically or in person. When I started this show, I really didn't know exactly where it was going to go or what form it was going to take. And I think at certain points throughout the years, I had, bigger dreams for the podcast and what exactly it would be. And it's kind of just turned into a really strong companion for everything else that I do and a means of connecting to a lot of other people out in the industry. And, that specifically, I'm actually really happy with. I'm happy that I get to sit down at the end of the week and just kind of put my thoughts out there to everybody that is interested in learning about this stuff, right? They have the same obsession or passion or interest that I do. And I can just mind dump at the end of the week, and then people, they either learn from that, maybe it changes their perspective, maybe they share something with me, that happens a lot, and I really appreciate it, right? I'll put something out there and then somebody will message me and be like, hey, that thing that you said, well, here's, the real solution, or here's what you missed, or here's what you didn't know. That's a really cool thing that I feel very lucky to be able to do with a bunch of professionals in the industry that I call home. But let's talk about kind of where the podcast is. Let's give it some numbers, some context, stuff that you guys don't necessarily see or know. Maybe you do or don't care. I don't know, but I'm going to throw it out there and you do with it what you will. So like I said, 1 million downloads, really cool, right? So the hosting site that I use, you can actually look at a lot of the different stats. And to be honest, I haven't paid much attention to them. I've kind of been keeping an eye on that like total download number. Why 1 million means anything, it doesn't change anything about the podcast. It's just a round whole number that adds another zero. So it's kind of cool. But at that point, I dug a little deeper into the statistics and some things, and there's some stuff that's pretty interesting. So the top applications that the podcast listened to is Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Like by far, those are the number 2 that people are downloading the podcast on. And they're actually like very close to one another and encompass most of the downloads that I have. And like mobile specifically, because you can see if it's a desktop versus mobile, that's 90%, which makes sense. It's a podcast. You're generally not listening into it on a desktop or other device. But Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spotify is in the lead, although that wasn't always the case. For the number of the first few years, it was Apple, and Spotify has kind of gained in the popularity. But here's what's interesting. The iPhone actually has a significant amount of more downloads than an Android phone. So even though people are using an iPhone more often to download the podcast, they're using Spotify more often on the iPhone, I would assume. So interesting there. But yeah, like I said, it's mostly mobile. The other interesting thing was where the downloads are coming from. And this is another really like mind-blowing thing about doing a podcast in, today's day and age, is you can put it out there and people anywhere in the world can listen to what you have to say, whether that be YouTube or podcast. But you can break it down by like continent and by where those downloads are actually going. And the bulk of them definitely are North America. So out of 1 million downloads, 825,000 are North America. So, that makes sense. That's where I'm at. That's going to be my primary audience. I talk about vehicles from here primarily, but it is not just that. Of course, we have almost 80,000 that are in Australia, and then another 80,000 that are in the UK. So to my listeners out there in Australia and UK, thank you for listening to a show from some other guy from another country. And obviously I have strong connections with people in Australia. I've talked about that a ton on the podcast, had people on. I've told you about my adventures getting to go down there and teach. Amazing experience. And it's all thanks to doing the podcast. Like that's what all spawned that stuff and got that to happen. That otherwise I don't think there's a way that would happen in my life. So again, really cool. And then the rest are smaller numbers between Asia, Africa, South America. They round up the rest of them. You can look at the city. Now, there is something to the city part of it that it depends. Like a lot of times I'll download stuff on my iPhone. It says I'm in Chicago. I'm not. So I take that with a grain of salt. So Chicago is the number 1 for downloads, but the second one is actually Sydney, Australia. So even though North America has the most, by city, Australia takes not only the number 2 spot, but the number 3 spot in Melbourne as well. And I'm probably saying Melbourne wrong because I said it wrong the whole time I was there. But it is number 3. Number 4 is my hometown, Minneapolis. And then we do Los Angeles, Denver, Toronto, so Canada, Houston, Seattle, and Atlanta, and that rounds out the top cities that actually download the podcast. So if you're in one of those cities, thank you. I mean, thank you to everybody for listening, but it's cool to see it broken down there. And it's cool because you can actually look at like all of the cities and you can see these random places. Like, again, you can look at the Asia downloads and see all these random places that someone's downloading and listening to your podcast. So I thought I'd just share that because it's interesting to see, and not everybody gets to see that sort of thing as far as when you're listening to this on a week-to-week basis. And I don't always think about it. Sometimes I'm on here and I'm just rambling and I'm not really conscious of like, hey, somebody on the other side of the world could be listening to this content and, you know, absorbing it for one reason or another. And as far as the future of the show goes, I'm going to keep on rolling with this. I'm committed. I'm going to keep doing it. There's, again, been so many people that reached out over the years where they've told me how this has benefited them or what they got out of it. You know, even if it's just a small piece, I've always said, like, even if you change someone's trajectory by 1%, it ends up being a large amount over an extended period of time. And so it's worth doing, right? If you can positively impact someone in some way, well, let's do it. You know, it's a little bit of my time in order to do that. So I'm going to keep on rolling with it and keep doing it. It's been a little lack on the guests lately. I haven't put a whole lot of effort into that. I might get back at that, but I also do just I like diving into the technical content. And I think a lot of people that listen, it's the same thing. That's why they're here, is the technical content. And occasionally we can hear from the people who are really the pioneers of that technical content, but I'm going to kind of bring front and center of what I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis in my, you know, work life, like I always do. And of course, I've been dumping the AI stuff in here quite a bit recently as well, but I do think that's just, it's such a big thing that's going to affect all of us in this industry and outside, but that we can't ignore it. And it's been such a big piece of what I've been doing lately that, yeah, I obviously just can't stop talking about it. But really, where I want to wrap this one up, I'm not going to yammer on forever about just the show. I just want to thank everybody out there for listening and thank people for reaching out and sharing, you know, if this has helped you in some way or another, if it has done something positive for you. I think I've mentioned on the show before, I've gotten messages from people that are incarcerated, and through no effort of my own, the show got put into rotation at, I'm assuming, multiple different, you know, incarceration facilities where it is educational content. And those people consume, you know, the podcast, and then they're able to send me messages. I have had a few technical difficulties getting back to some of the people because you have to do it through a third-party application. So if for some reason that's you and you didn't end up getting my message, I do apologize. I've tried for every one, but I did have a couple issues on some of them. Anyways, irregardless, just getting that information and, you know, what those people are gaining out of the information that I'm sharing was something completely unexpected. Never something that I thought would be the case when I was putting this information out there. But again, if it's benefiting someone and changing a trajectory of your career or what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to keep on doing this. So that's really where it's at. And I guess if you have something to share, I've said this before over the years too, if you've got something that you're passionate about that you just can't stop talking about or can't stop thinking about, whatever it might be, maybe it's within the automotive realm, maybe it's outside of, I encourage you to share it in one form or another. It doesn't have to be a podcast, it could be a YouTube, could be teaching of some sort or another. There's so many different outlets and opportunities that you have today in today's digital world where if you've got information, you've got knowledge, you've got passion about something, go share it. Go put it out there in one way or another. And not only is someone else going to benefit from it, you'll end up benefiting from it as well too. So that's where I'm going to wrap this one up. We'll get back to the technical content next week. But thank you. 1 million downloads. Pretty freaking cool. With that all out of the way, let's get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.